All right, hello everyone. This is Tony from SOVHorror.com, and I am joined this time by the great Brett Kelly. You may know him from such great movies as Prey for the Beast, Jurassic Shark, Bone Setter, Final Curtain. I mean, you've done a billion movies, Brett, and we'll try to talk about quite a few. But before we get into it, as usual, guys, I'm going to go ahead and throw out my plugs. It's kind of Thanksgiving season. This is going to be out the day before Thanksgiving. And just want to say, I hope everyone has a great holiday. Whether you celebrate it or not, I'm thankful for all you fans who have helped support our company over the last year. It's been awesome putting out all these great movies. And we're really excited to bring out a lot of cool stuff next year as well. But in December, we have two really cool releases I just want to let people know about. The first one is from director Matt Brassfield. This is from 2006. This is a movie called The Sadness. It's kind of like a teenage slasher flick. It goes really well with movies like Amerikill and Slumber Party Murder Mania. So if you picked up those releases, this is right up your alley here. So The Sadness coming December 13th. And then we also have a drive-in double feature of two early films from Joe Sherlock. We got Crimson Heather and Lust of the Vampire Hookers. And this is sandwiched together with awesome retro drive-in ads and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. This is the first of 3 volumes we're going to be doing covering Joe Sherlock's work. So keep your eyes peeled for the rest. All right, now that I got the giant plug out of the way, I'm super excited today to talk to Brett Kelly. Me and Brett actually go pretty back. I think we first met, I don't know, around like 05, 06 on the Retro Media forums.
Yes, I missed that.
Yeah, gosh, those forums were so great. There were so many, great people on there. And I know for myself, I was just still getting into filmmaking and stuff like that during then. And it was so cool being able to talk to Fred and, people like you, Jim Warnowski, Ron Ford, Ted Newsom, all these great guys on there who would share not only their knowledge of cinema, but their love for cinema, and I know I was exposed to a lot of stuff and learned a lot from that forum. And
Yeah, I
that was a
befriended a
great
lot of
time.
those guys. It was nice. At the time, I was probably 3 or so years into my career, and to get advice. I mean, I've spoken to Fred and Jim and a few of those guys on the phone, which is just
Oh, wow.
mind blowing. And when to be treated with such respect, I guess, by people who you didn't, you see, Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers on VHS when you're a kid, and suddenly you're talking to the guy on the phone, or hanging out at a film festival with Wynorski and Kevin Tenney, and it was really nice. I miss that message board a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun on there. And that's how we met. And I
Mhm.
think it was, I'm pretty sure it was Prey for the Beast was, I think, the first one that we kind of worked on together. You needed some effects stuff, and I was
Mhm.
still kind of fresh at doing that stuff, and still learning. And you gave me a chance, and I did a couple squibs, I think, and some stuff like that. And since then we've gone on, and gosh, I've worked on quite a few of your movies now. So
Yeah, the one that stands out was Jurassic Shark. I think, right? I think you did an explosion for that,
yeah,
for the
yeah.
notorious Jurassic Shark.
I actually just rewatched that one the other day, kind of preparing for this. And it was really cool. One thing I want to mention about that movie is I really love, like, obviously, I'm presuming you didn't have a lot of the shark footage, the CGI type element. But the way that movie was edited together and edited around, the way those shark sequences were edited was, I thought, so clever and put together so well. Did you edit? I don't recall. Did you edit that film, or did you have an editor who kind of helped you with that?
I did that one. Uh, and the idea behind that movie, if you go back, I mean, people probably don't remember, but when I did Jurassic Shark, the only shark movies that were being done at the time were the Asylum was doing the Mega Sharks,
Right,
and then the Sci-Fi Channel was doing stuff. But there was no knockoffs. There was no $1.50 shark movies that are all over the place now.
right.
So at the time, I did it to kind of try to get my foot in the door with people like the Asylum to say like, hey, I can make that kind of stuff too. So we were trying to do something kind of like a Mega Shark. So we were kind of trying to follow the formula. Jeff O'Brien had written a couple of things that were on the Sci-Fi Channel, and he told us the formula. So we were trying to follow the Sci-Fi Channel formula as best we could. Then ultimately it got re-edited by someone else, and the pace got slowed down, but and dragged out, you should say. Um, but that was what we were intending to do, and of course, now everyone looks back and assumes it had something to do with the success of Sharknado, which there was no Sharknado at the time.
Right.
It was probably one of the first like independent shark movies that didn't have a company behind it.
For sure, yeah. And you did another one not too long ago, Raiders of the Lost Shark, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. My dubious shark trilogy is kind of like an fu to the people that didn't take my serious movies, or not my serious movies, but my good movies seriously. Um, I did a movie called My Fair Zombie, which is a musical comedy period piece zombie film. So it was, and it's really excellent. And if I do say so myself, it's very ambitious and it looks fantastic, and the script's good and it's funny, and it didn't exactly set the world on fire the way I thought it would.
Right.
And I cynically said to my wife, I said, you know what? I'll bet I could come up with a dumb shark title tomorrow, and I'll have a contract on my desk by the end of the day. And she said, I don't care, which I interpreted as go for it. So I said Raiders of the Lost Shark, and by the end of the day, I had 2 or 3 companies saying, "Yeah, we want that."
Wow.
So then she said, "Well done. Now you got to make it, you idiot." So I kind of made it as like all the people who took Jurassic Shark too seriously. I said, "I'm going to make something so stupid that you guys aren't even going to realize that I'm doing this to punk you in a way."
Right.
Because then if we made it so ridiculous that if anybody said, "Oh, that's so fake," the joke's on them, because it's like we're not idiots. We know exactly it costs $200, or something. So and then it turned out that you know it ended up in Walmart's, and it ended up all over the world, and so the joke was on me in a way. Because now there's a third one that I had to do for a company, and so now everyone knows me as like the cheap shark guy, but I've actually got this history of like all these really elaborate, well thought out, artistically intended films.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you originally, as from what I recall, you originally kind of started out because you really wanted to act. And can you kind of talk about how you kind of fell into filmmaking?
Yeah. So when I was a younger kid or younger guy, I thought I wanted to be an actor, and so I was doing a lot of theater. And then I thought, well, I want to make the move into film. But at the time in Ottawa, where I'm from, there was no films going on. There was the occasional, you know, um, Lifetime movie would come up here with someone from Baywatch would play a woman in distress or something. That was about it, really, that was going on, and that was very occasional. So I said, well, if I want to be in movies, I'm going to make my own. So I had gone to broadcasting at college, and so I kind of knew the basics. So I started making movies in an attempt to get an acting resume built up. So I did the Feral. Well, I did a couple of really shitty things first, but the Feral Man was the first one that got released by Tempe Video in
Right.
2002, I think, and it was really earnest, and I thought it had a good heart, and yeah, that's the one. Look at that face. Look at that young guy. No
That's
wrinkles at all.
right.
And so that was kind of the start of it. And then as things kind of progressed, my wife convinced me when I was casting for Attack of the Giant Leeches. I said I really wanted to play the sheriff, and she said that I was always doing too much. And she said, if you find someone who's better for the role than you are, don't take the part. And I said, okay. And sure enough, someone came out and went, yeah, they would be better. So I never acted. I haven't done a principal role in one of my movies ever since, and it's better. I mean, I'm paying more attention to the to the directing and the shots, and I'm not worrying about what my hair looks like, or
Right.
you know what I mean, all that
You kind
nonsense.
of
So
miss the acting aspect of it, though.
sometimes I tried doing a short where I did a short film last year called Heavy Metal Werewolf, and I was in it, and I was so out of practice, because I was also directing at the same time too. And
Right.
in the movie, I had to kiss a girl, and I'm married, so I'm already kissing somebody who's not my wife, and I'm nervous. and I have to learn my lines, and I have to make sure that people are doing the shots, and I didn't know the cinematographer, so I was just like horrible. So I'd like if I'd lo- I'm thinking about acting in other people's movies once I things wind down for me.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I presume, yeah. I mean, you kind of mentioned that you were kind of the lead in most of your early films. I'd say like at least what the first like 7 or 8 movies, you were kind
Hmm.
of the lead or one of the principal actors in them. And that was one thing personally that I always kind of thought was cool because not only, you see the name Brett Kelly, but then you also see the face acting on screen. And it was always kind of cool to kind of see what kind of role you would put yourself in this time. And one of my favorites I definitely want to mention is the remake of Kingdom of the Vampire that you did.
Yeah,
And
I
how
love
did
that
how
one.
did that kind of come about?
Well, my first few movies were put out by Tempe Video, which is J.R. Bookwalter's company,
Right.
and J.R. I think he mentioned to me at a convention one time that he was they were going to do a remake of Kingdom, and Matt Walsh was going to direct it, and Brink Stevens and uh, Jeff Dylan Graham were going to be in it,
Okay.
and then it kind of fell through, and it never ever happened. And then I don't remember what how it came to pass. Um, I think I emailed JR and I said, "Do you still have that script? Because I'd be interested in taking a stab at it." And to my surprise, he was like, "Yeah, here you go. Here's some art, and here's the script, and let me know what you think." And I had Gab McKenzie, who was what's her stage name? Karen Landstad, is kind of like a good Brink substitute. Like
Right.
she was fantastic. So I'm like, I could totally do this. And so it was really atmospheric, and I'm really proud of how the movie looks. Like it still holds up. And the funny thing is, I don't think what's his name, Matthew Walsh. I don't think he was too happy
Oh.
um, because, and I messaged him on MySpace, which tells you when this was, and I said to him, "Hey, I really really like your script. I think it's one of the best scripts you've done, and I'm looking forward to directing it." And you know, something like that. I was very complimentary to him, and I think he replied saying thanks, like a one word answer. And then next thing you know, the movie is being advertised as being written by uh, Mary Walsham, like they took an anagram of Matt Walsh's name. They changed all the letters around, and he didn't
Oh,
take credit for the script, even though it's an excellent script. It was written by him, but he just refused to take credit because I think he was upset that he didn't get to direct it.
yeah. I don't,
So I'm pretty proud of it. And Yeah, so it's funny. Jr. has said in a few interviews that I think it's even on the box that it's a better version than the original. But a lot of people really like the campiness of the original. So in some ways, it gets overlooked because it's not cheesy like the other one is. I think.
yeah, it's really fun. I mean, I personally like you said, it's not as campy as the original, but it's played very straight. But it's such a great story, and I think that's ultimately what really makes that movie. And your performance, as well as the actress who played your mother in the movie, I thought was really really strong.
Thanks. I love the Anastasia who played the love interest. She was really really good as well. Um, Yeah, I think it really turned out. I'm really happy with it. Another funny story about that movie is we were filming in a video store where it was actually they still were renting VHS tapes. And as a tip of the hat, I brought in some of my Tempe VHSs. And this one actor, Jody Hawk, was a character who's supposed to be angry, and he takes a VHS off the shelf and throws it on the ground. Well, he was supposed to take this like garbage tape I had and throw it on the ground, but he
Right.
grabbed my autographed copy of Bloodletting and he
Oh
took
no.
it and he smashed it, just smashed it to bits. And I was like, "Oh no! You grabbed the wrong tape." And then we did another take, and I think he smashed like my polymorph or something. I'm like, "Stop smashing my good tapes!"
Wow.
So I think they're $200 on eBay now, and he just shattered it
Oh
on the
yeah.
ground.
Now, do you know? I know, as you know, JR's re-putting out those early kind of cinema home video releases, including the Kingdom of the Vampire. Do you know, is your version going to be on that Blu-ray as well?
Nope, apparently not. But I think someone asked him that on his website, and I think he replied that there might be a double feature Blu-ray of Kingdom of the Vampire and My Dead Girlfriend,
Oh wow, okay.
which would be kind of cool. I mean, I'm not going to get a nickel for it, I'm sure, but I'd still like to see it.
Right. And
Yeah,
that's another really cool one. So actually, how did you even kind of hook up with Jared to begin with? Because he put out a lot of your early, DVDs.
yeah, that's a funny story. When I first started, like the first one I did was Feral Man, and then I did Bone Setter, and I put them out on. I made like 50 or 100 VHS tapes, and I sent them out to distributors and stuff like that. And I didn't really get much feedback from anybody. And then I packaged a bunch of them up, and I went to this convention in Ohio called Dark Xmas, and it was sometime in November of like 2001 or something. And so we showed up, and we were sitting next to Mike Watt and Amy Lynn Best, and then across from us was Jr., some dude from Star Trek, and like all this stuff. But then there was a snowstorm, and nobody came. So it was all these tables full of guests, all sitting there, all looking at each other, drinking beer at our booths or whatever. And so I started talking to Jr. and um, I mentioned to him that I'd sent him a couple of my movies, and he said, "Oh, he hadn't seen them yet." So we were just kind of shooting the breeze, and I think later on he said, "Hey, you want to go grab a bite?" So we went and had a hamburger, and I think we talked about Simpsons episodes. I don't even know that we even talked about movies. And then by the end of the weekend, he'd agreed to sign the first two movies.
Wow.
Just I guess because we got along on a personal level. So Bonesetter was released first, I think. I'm pretty sure it was because I have a memory of staring at the disc for about an hour. Like, you get your first physical release. And
Sure.
then Feral Man, he put out second. But I was pretty excited about that. And then uh, Final Curtain, I think, and Bonesetter Returns would have been next. But yeah, and yeah, that's what I call phase one.
Yeah, and also the spaceman shorts as well.
Yes. Yeah, that was a funny one. I did that. I'd originally done that as a Super 8 thing, like in '99 or 2000, and then we remade it on video as kind of like an Ed Wood homage. And Tempe was gonna put it out, but we reversed the deal where I actually paid for the product to be made, and they distributed it. So that in the contract, I ended up getting the first 50% instead of the second 50%. So I saw a profit pretty quick. But I think then JR was like, oh, because he didn't get his money first. But then on the bright side, he sold off the stock of them, I think, and
Sure.
so it's not like it broke the bank or anything, but it was fun.
Right.
I've had this dubious success where literally everything I've done is out there at one point. Like it was everything that was released. So I sometimes joke that you know my some of my early stuff is like the crayon drawing you put on the fridge. It's like, but everyone got to see it. So yeah, so I've made something like 32 movies, and every single one's been released in some capacity. So it's kind of it's a neat record, but it's I can't hide from my past either.
Well, I'm a big fan of a lot of that early stuff. I'll be honest, I haven't seen as much of your recent work, and I definitely want to check some of that out. But one that looks really awesome is your most recent, and Galaxy Warriors. You want to kind of tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, so Galaxy Warriors, I, it's funny. I've been seeing my Facebook memories, and apparently I've been talking about doing a space movie for over 10 years. Something because I've always loved. I grew up at the perfect time that Star Wars came out when I was a kid, and then there was Battlestar Galactica and Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon, and then you get your Battle Beyond the Stars and your Star Crash, and all the knockoffs and all that stuff. And I was just primed and ready for that sort of stuff when I was a kid. And so I've always wanted to make something like that. So I was talking to, I don't know if I should name drop in this case because we didn't end up doing it, but one of the someone we mentioned already, was gonna do a space movie in the '80s, and I said, "Hey, why don't I take a crack at it?" And then the idea fell through, but it blossomed into that Galaxy Warriors is a women in prison space movie, but it's also a gladiator movie. So it's like space gladiator prison movie. Uh, yeah. So like some of those Sirio Santiago um, kind of movies, but in space. If it was done by like, yeah, Sirio San Diego meets Star Crash, kind of, but Canadian. So, so it's a lot of fun so far. We filmed half of it, and now we're waiting for COVID restrictions to lift a little bit, and for we just did a fundraiser that just ended yesterday, and so and then winter, of course, because Canadian winters, and so we're gearing up to start filming again once things warm up a bit. But we're about halfway done filming, and it's looking pretty good. And we got a great cast, and it's people. It's designed to look like an '80s sci-fi movie, so people's hair's teased up and they're wearing too much eye makeup, and it's a lot of fun.
That's one thing that really grabbed me is, I've been kind of following it since you kind of announced the project, and I know your wife Anne Marie Kelly, she's done a lot of like costumes, and
Oh
I've
yeah.
seen you guys kind of develop the sets and all this stuff, and that's, to me, that's just so awesome, and that's what I love about low budget and non-budget cinema is, you guys, your wife is literally making the costumes for the movie, and I mean, they're amazing. It's a great job, I gotta say, and it just
Mhm.
it's just so impressive, and so just motivating, I think, to me and just other people as well, when you see that kind of DIY, real DIY filmmaking.
Yeah, it's really inspiring because to me, because when I come up with an idea, I'll say, "Hey, honey, I want to do a movie called something something," and I can see the look on her face, like, but then then I'll say like, "Hey, Galaxy Warriors," and she'll go, "All right, let's start checking YouTube to see how to do stuff."
Right.
And you go, "Oh, okay, I hit on an idea that she wants to do." So um, apparently, it was a year ago yesterday we started building things. And so I just threw away a bunch of armor experiments that didn't work out, and so we designed all these armors like for the soldiers, not soldiers, but prison guards to wear, and all the women are wearing breastplates, and um, we had a spaceship guy. Like all our spaceships are models, like they're not um, it's not CGI, it's all practical models. So we had an effects guy quit, and so then I ended up having to build all the models myself. So the main hero spaceship is made of like a toy microphone and some yogurt bottles, and just the way Jim Cameron would have done it on Battle Beyond the Stars.
Hmm.
But it looks good. I mean, it looks I mean, there's foam, there's following the tradition of having a foam hamburger container on the wall.
Right.
you know? So if you're into those things, I mean, if you're someone who thinks you're getting Star Wars, then you're looking in the wrong place, because
Right.
what we're doing, we're not doing a low budget Star Wars. We're doing a lower budget Battle Beyond the Stars.
Right. Or like a Star
So
Slammer or something like that, right?
exactly, exactly. Yeah, it's funny. I'm a fan of Fred Olen Reyes, but I didn't even realize Star Slammer was a thing until I started doing this one. And it's funny. One of my actresses was doing research for the role, and she said, "I found this movie called Star Slammer I just watched," and she's like, "We're not. We're." I think she was because there's nudity in that one, and we don't have nudity in hers. And she was like, "Oh, I'm so glad we're not doing that." But if you love Star Slammer and big Dollhouse and uh, Star Crash and things like that, you'll probably dig this one.
Right.
And we have we're getting some poster art made by Ron Sutton, who was the artist of the Elvira comic book,
Oh wow, cool.
and it's being painted by Jeff Isherwood, who did Doctor Strange for Marvel.
Wow.
And so we're gonna have the idea is that it's gonna be a nice retro looking uh, drawn poster, as opposed to like the Photoshop jobs.
Sure. Sure.
Hmm
And another one you just had come out recently was, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe most of it was made in quarantine, which is Conga TNT.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Congo was funny because um, my kids and I, like, obviously when they first got pulled out of school, no one knew what to do, so we were trying to figure out ways to keep the kids busy and to try to teach them stuff because school was out. So I thought, well, I'll teach them how to do movies. So we had just watched um, like Gorgo or something, a mystery science theater thing, and the kids wanted to do something like that. So we got this gorilla puppet, and we said we'll do a giant gorilla movie. So we started filming the kids doing their bit, and then I started talking to Trevor Payer, who writes some of my comedies with me, and I said, why don't you jot in some other scenes and make yourself into this character, and we'll film that stuff. And then I talked to John Migliore, who lives in Hamilton, is a few hours away, and I said, hey, do you want to do some effects of making the gorilla giant? And so then that started blowing up, and then I looked through all my old stock footage and I found a bunch of military stuff. And then I looked at some of my movies where there's scenes that I didn't use or footage I didn't use, and I thought, oh my gosh, I could make this into a bigger thing. So the thing expanded where it eventually became a feature
Okay.
by accident. Like, I wasn't planning to make a feature. I was just trying to keep my kids busy. And but then we got more excited about it as it went along. And then sure enough, it became this kind of like tongue in cheek. Um, it's actually a kids movie. It's a kids movie. No holds barred. It's not really being marketed as one,
Right.
uh, but it's the movie starts off as Raiders of the Lost Ark, then becomes ET, and then becomes Godzilla, all in
Oh,
one film. And if you see it, you'll know what I mean. But so it's silly fun that we shot, incorporating all these elements, and it turned out pretty good. The feedback's been good. People seem to get it, which is always the name of the game when you're making these kind of movies. As you go, are people going to get it, or are people going to think? I never had this worry until Jurassic Shark got pirated in every single country in the world. But suddenly people were under the impression that I was trying to cheat people by making cheap movies. It's like, no, no. If you like cheap movies, you know what I'm trying to do here. Like, we're playing to our audience, which is people like you're the fans of your show and your label.
yeah.
The people who know what they like. That's what we're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, I got to ask you, because you mentioned Heavy Metal Werewolf. And I remember, I feel like that one, I know I made like a title card for you for that, like, I don't know, like a really long time ago. So that's kind of
Oh
one I
yeah.
believe was gestating for quite a while. So kind of,
Yeah.
is that short release? How can people see that? I'm really interested in checking that out myself. I mean, the title's amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those like kind of almost was things for years where I think years ago David Lloyd wrote something for me, and I think I was going to film it on VHS at one point, just to do it, just for the experiment. And then for whatever reason it didn't happen. I think someone did a rewrite. Anyway, for whatever reason it never came to be. And then a couple of years ago I grew my hair long again and I joined a hair band, and so I'm actually playing in a band called Gelatin Skeleton, and we play like that kind of music. So I thought, hey, it'd be fun to bring that idea back. So we made a song called Heavy Metal Werewolf. I wrote it with Mike Treblecock from, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name of his band, but he's from a really award-winning band up here in Canada, the Killjoys, for crying out loud. And then the script, did David write it, or I've made so many movies now I blank on it, all the
Sure.
details, but I'm pretty sure Dave wrote it. Uh, Trevor might have had a hand in it as well. But so the idea was um, that we were going to film this opening scene where I'm the singer of the band. We just left. I play a gig. I leave with a groupie. I get bit by a werewolf, and then I kill the girl, and then everyone assumes I'm dead or whatever. And then the band comes to the rehearsal place, and the werewolf starts killing everybody. So it's a way that I got to be the singer, which I am in the band, in my band, and I could kind of like act a little bit and then disappear for a while because I'm then a werewolf.
Right.
And my band was going to play the band, and we were going to kill everybody off, and it was going to be like very Scooby Doo-ish. And then so we filmed the opening scene, and we filmed the performance, which became the music video for the song "Heavy Metal Werewolf." And then suddenly I couldn't find anybody who wanted a crew on it, and I couldn't cast it. Like beyond the band, nobody else seemed to be interested in being in it. So it was just one of those things where I'm like, well, I guess the scenes that we filmed is the movie now. So it was going to be a feature, but we ended up just making it into the short. So um, it's not. I haven't done anything as far as release with it. It's probably 10 minutes long, and I was thinking about doing something where I package it together with the music videos,
Right.
but I haven't done anything with it at the moment. It kind of entered film festival limbo with all the COVID.
Right.
So I think it played at one festival in Spain.
Oh,
Uh, yeah, but
I've seen the
it's
music.
kind of weird
The
because
music video is really cool.
yeah, it's been fun. It's it's been kind of interesting to be in front of the camera again, um, being part of doing the music videos for the band.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it would have been a nice feature to do, but it was just, you know, uh, uh, it was going to be kind of like our homage to like Black Roses, or you know, which I was inquiring about how to get the rights to do a remake of that, and that never happened. But
Wow, that would have
Black
been
Roses or Rock and Roll Nightmare, I always thought that would be fun to do one of
right.
those. But
And now that I remember it, I think, and I could be wrong. I feel like you were maybe going to produce that for Warlock, if I remember correctly. Now that I think about it, Chris Seaver.
oh, I think you might be right.
Yeah, I think so. It was a long time ago. So,
That's got to be over 15 years, maybe, or about
yeah.
15 years. Yeah, maybe.
And you mentioned the
Uh,
band. Obviously, I know you have a big love for like glam metal and hair metal. Like, how did you start like getting into like singing and performing?
well, before I was acting, I used to sing in a hair band back in the early '90s. We were called Heart Attack Jack, and yeah, I was like a 19-year-old kid trying to meet girls and sing in a band, and get free bar tabs and stuff like that, and it worked out for a little while. And but our timing was bad because there we are, it's 1992, and we're playing Warrant and LA Guns and Skid Row songs. Uh, but there's Smells Like Teen Spirit climbing the charts all of a sudden. Kind of the worst time to be in a hair band. But
Right.
so that kind of and then the 90s hit like a ton of bricks, and we all cut our hair and didn't know what the hell to do with ourselves. And I think that's when I kind of pivoted into acting. Um, and doing theater and stuff like that, which is similar enough, but I didn't have to deal with other people in a band, which sometimes band members are, it's like a four-way marriage
Oh
sometimes.
yeah.
And yeah,
I've played in numerous bands myself for sure. Yeah.
yeah. So, but I 2 years ago when I started to back up again, I thought, you know what, I'm still young enough, and I'm still, it hurts the next day, but I can still perform this, right now. So, so we're trying a little thing. We have an EP now, but we're working on putting it together an LP and see if we can get a little deal and
All
just
right.
cross it off the bucket list.
Nice.
But then COVID, so
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of put a hamper on a lot of things creatively, unfortunately for most people,
yeah,
especially music. Gosh, yeah. No live shows anymore.
yeah. I waited a decade to play in a hair band again, and now,
Right. And
yeah.
I know one of your, I've never seen this one, but I've heard you talk about it in the past, is Night Songs, which obviously
Oh,
I get the Cinderella reference there. But
wow, good job,
oh, I'm a big hair metal fan myself. I love all types of
awesome.
music, and definitely love the '80s hair metal. And agree what a trip it was when '92 hit, and it was like, bam, like hair metal was just gone. Like you said,
Yeah,
cut their hair, and it was just dead.
persona non grata like that. Um, yeah, Night Songs was I had just stopped singing in hair bands and was getting into film for the first time, but I didn't know who I was yet. Like my identity was still confused, so I still wanted to be a rocker, but I was also wanting to be a filmmaker. So we made this film, Night Songs, which was kind of like an anthology, a really shitty, pretentious anthology of like music meets like vampire type stuff.
Right.
And there was things I didn't understand about filmmaking at the time. Like I didn't know the whole page per minute of running time. And my friend who was working on it didn't really have the same background as me. So our coverage was terrible, but we did it, and we were young and trying it out. And um, it's terrible. It's awful, but it exists. And uh, I just came across some outtakes of it the other day, and I watched it, and I thought, oh my God, oh, but it got released on VHS by Draculina.
Oh wow, wow.
Yeah, Draculina Catalog put that out on VHS. And funny enough, I don't know if it sold anything. Like there wasn't very many copies. There's probably a handful of copies out in the world.
Right.
And I think the first time I ever saw Ron Bonk, I've never met Ron officially in person, but the first time I saw him and I was awake, I think that's Ron Bonk, was I was at a Cinema Wasteland or something, and he had a box full of VHSs, and I saw a copy of Night Songs in there, and I thought, oh, how did that get there? I mean, I saw one in the wild, and I didn't have the heart to say, hey, that's me. So, but then a bunch of years ago, Ron and Sub Rosa put out a Bonesetter VHS, and they included Night Songs as a bonus feature.
Oh wow.
So I don't know if no one's ever told me that they have it, but I'm sure someone does because they sold it. But yeah, it's one of those. It's awful. It's awful. It's terrible, man. Fuck. It's like young skinny Brett thinking he's in Nine Inch Nails, uh, and there's like naked girls in it. At the time when I was inspired to make Night Songs, what was going on at the time was things like EI Independent Cinema was putting out their alternative cinema magazine, and they were selling stuff like Caress of the Vampire. And do you remember those things?
Oh yeah, Vampire Seduction. Those early vampire softcore movies.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I tried to do. That was my first attempt, thinking, well, if I make that, clearly it will sell.
Right.
But it was so incompetently done that we eventually figured it out in time for Feral Man.
When you mentioned in that Bone Setter, which is kind of your closest, as far as I know, of like other than the shark movies, of like kind of a series of films that
Hmm.
you made, and I think I got one of them over here somewhere. Now here's a second one here for people to see.
Yeah.
But and I what I really liked about that was the story of that, and isn't that now that's based on kind of like a real kind of fable or nursery rhyme, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. In Quebec, which is we're right on the border of Quebec. Um, there was a story that parents used to tell their kids in order to try to get them to go to bed early. They would say, if you don't go to bed by 7 o'clock, le bonhomme 7 heures, which translates to 7 o'clock man, will come and get you. But phonetically, bonhomme 7 heures sounds like bone setter.
Right.
So they would. So then I think the story became that he was a traveling um, healer. Like he would go town to town, and if someone broke their bones, he'd snap them back in place. I can't remember how much of it is real and how much of it I made up because it's been so long. But um, in our story, he was a traveling guy that went town to town, and then he was abducting kids, and so then he kind of like gets killed by a mob, and then I can't remember every 10 years or every 7 years or something like that, he comes back and starts doing it again,
Right.
something like that. Yeah, I love it. I loved it too, and I think it's a really original story. And well, it's original, but it's if you think about it, there's some things that sound a little bit like Freddy Krueger, and a little things that sound like other things. I mean, nothing's 100% original, but at the time, uh, I wasn't trying to do a Freddy Krueger thing. I was just kind of doing the story of the legend, and it came out, and it did pretty well. Like it's not as cool as saying, you're at the beginning of the VHS movement, but I was there at the beginning of the DVD movement, and hopefully that will be cool someday. But the Bone Setter came out, and it had a lot of bonus features, and people seemed to dig it, and it got released enough that I got well known for it for a while, and then we made the sequel. And actually, about 5 or 6 5 or 6 years ago, we were trying to get a remake done. I was trying to remake it, knowing what I know now,
Right.
and with a more serious kind of like, kind of a more serious take on it. Like, I saw the franchise potential, so I wanted to do something more serious. And we had a couple of treatments written, and a bunch of writers didn't really hit the story the way I wanted it to. And I went to a film market, and I was trying to pitch it to companies, and it just never really happened. I did a short called "A Tale of the Bone Setter," which was kind of my modern spin on it. I think it's online.
Okay. Cool.
Um, and Yeah, but it's really got a lot of potential to be something better than it was. You want to hear something really uh, humbling? So I got invited to this thing. This is my career in a nutshell. My career in a nutshell is something really cool happens where I go, "Wow, look at this iota of respect I just got," and then instantly someone comes along and goes zoink, and they take it away, right? So I got invited to this thing. Rue Morgue magazine was doing this art exhibit as part of the Fantasia Film Festival, and what they did was they got all these filmmakers of renown, and many of them were, but I was in there too. So all these, like the Soska twins and George Mahalka from My Bloody Valentine, and a bunch of people, and they were asked, and myself, and we were asked to come up with a movie that didn't exist in the real world, and then they're going to find an artist to make a poster for this imaginary movie, and then they're going to do an art display of the imaginary history of Canadian horror cinema.
Hmm.
So I did one set in the 40s that was kind of like an Abbott and Costello type thing. Then, other people did various things. One of them was the editor, which then ended up becoming a movie later on. So here I am feeling, pretty well respected to be part of this thing. So I show up to the film festival, and we're taking pictures with all these, well-to-do, well-established filmmakers. And then I'm going around looking at the exhibit, and I see a poster for supposedly in the 1950s, and it's called Bonhomme Setter. And I said to the organizer, I said, that actually is a movie that exists for real. And he goes, and it's actually in my bio. So I actually made this movie, and they're saying it's like a movie that didn't really exist. And it was the dude who did End of the Line or something who did it. And so I was a little bit embarrassed because there I am feeling like a big shot all of a sudden. And then there they are, like pretending this movie I made never existed and that somebody else had the idea. So I felt like an idiot. And then I got on this panel, and I was talking with all these people, and the guy started pitching it like he was trying to pitch it to get it made into a real movie. And when it came time to introduce me, I said, "Yeah, I actually made that movie that he's trying to pitch." And then Lee DeMarb, who made Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter, he leans over to me and he goes, "Let him make it, then sue his ass off." But I just thought that was kind of funny. Like, a lot of people know me for having made the Bone Setter and the Bone Setter Returns, but then there's this dude who's one province over from me in Canada who has no idea apparently, or didn't care.
Right.
So that's kind of weird.
Oh, that's so great. That's funny. And you kind of mentioned, you were there in that cusp of that early DV filmmaking. I mean, that kind of was, to me, that's kind of the next, say, the next progression from shot on video cinema was that early mini DV cinema where there's people
Mhm.
like you and Brad Sykes and David Sterling producing stuff and Ron Bonk, producing stuff. And, it was such an interesting time because things like Netflix were in their infancy. That was when you still got discs from them. Like I remember renting Bone Setter for the first time from Netflix on a disc, and
Yeah.
seeing all these independent movies actually kind of getting wide releases. You started seeing this stuff in Best Buys and Borders and in larger chains. and which was a pretty new thing. You know, earlier you maybe see a shot on video movie here and there at a rental store, but they were still pretty rare. Where, you know, those early 2000s were almost like a new wild west of independent filmmaking, and you were pretty
Yeah,
much on the ground floor of that. And you
yeah,
know,
it was
how do
pretty
you?
neat. It was. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, how does it, like, kind of looking back on that era, like, kind of what are your feelings and kind of thoughts on that era?
It was good. I miss it. I mean, it doesn't feel like that long ago, but in some ways it was. But I can remember my dead girlfriend got picked up by Blockbuster up here, and walking into a Blockbuster and seeing, my movie for rent, and that was pretty exciting. And I remember I crossed the border into Syracuse, and Brentwood Eclipse or whatever they were called put out a multi-pack,
Hmm.
and the Bone Setter was on it, and my picture was on the cover, and I bought like four of them, and the people behind the cash were like, "What? That's the guy from the box." And it was really cool. I mean, it seemed like everything was possible. You know, I mean, I wrote I wrote the Bone Setter in this cafeteria at the University of Ottawa, and then there I am like a year or two later, holding the DVD in my hand. And back then we used to load them up with bonus features because we wanted everyone to buy them, and distributors cared about bonus features then.
Right.
Um, so you'd have interviews and bloopers and commentary tracks and all sorts of stuff, and we gave it all. And then that lasted for a good uh, 7 or 8 years, I think. And then it got to the point where you'd submit a movie to a distributor, and they didn't care if you gave them a commentary track, and no one wanted any bonus features because they were just going to bare bones it. And it just kind of it took the joy out of it, because I mean, as you know, better than most, I think, the tactile feeling of holding a product in your hand is like so amazing. And I can remember, I'd get the Tempe stuff, or I'd get some um, you know I can't even think of the names of the company. Who else was doing good stuff around then? Like
Uh,
Blue Underground. And
Cinema, Brain Damage Films.
yeah, you get the disc in your hand, you go, wow, what's this going to be? It
Right.
was like an extension of the VHS days,
Hmm.
um, which it was pretty cool because at the time, like, I was still sending screeners out to distributors on VHS. I was sending them VHS tape to look at in the mail, okay, if you can imagine. And then all of a sudden, the movies come out, and they're on Blu-ray, or sorry, DVDs. And I was like, wow, the only DVD I owned at that time was, I owned a public domain Night of the Living Dead, and I owned Witch House 3,
Right.
you know? So, and suddenly my movie's on DVD. I thought, wow, that's fantastic. I still love having them on DVD. I mean, I don't get any joy out of finding my movie on a Roku. It's
Right.
they're there and it's neat and people are watching it, but it's just not the same as someone sending you a VH. Like, even I've just had some VHS releases even, and you get some VHS or DVDs or Blu-rays. You go, yeah, like that's that's not gonna be taken away by Apple in a year. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it was kind of like a different kind of Wild West in a way. And I wouldn't be at all surprised. Some people think I'm nuts for saying it, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if DVDs and whatever, or VHS, came back the way vinyl is, because there's something to it. I mean, when people discover that the movie they think they bought on iTunes, suddenly the rights have expired and they don't own it anymore. I mean, they're going to go, well, hold on a second, I want to own that. So we'll see. I'm probably wrong, but it'd be nice.
I'd like to think you're right, obviously. But and one thing I find really interesting is I kind of mentioned Netflix earlier, and, like, you know, obviously a lot of these you know, more low budget titles were available on that platform when they first started. And I remember even when they first started the streaming, like when it was brand new, and it was stuff like, I think some of your movies were up there, some of the Chris Seaver films were up there. I mean, you saw mainly only low budget kind of indie type productions, and then
I
that
remember
totally
seeing
obviously changed, you know.
Yeah, I remember seeing at one point, someone sent me a screenshot, and it had Thunderstorm, which is the superhero thing I made,
Right.
on Netflix, and then it says you may also like, and it was like 2010 Moby Dick, and these asylum titles and stuff, and I'm like, that's pretty cool. And then Captain America: First Avenger, you're like, okay. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's too bad. I mean, it's inevitable though that places like Amazon or Netflix or whatever will eventually start to get rid of the little guy. They always do. But there was a thing in Ottawa a few years ago where someone was trying to lay claim to being the first Ottawa filmmaker to being on Netflix, but we beat them in 2012.
Right.
And and I didn't know it was good. I didn't know it was a big deal until someone else tried to say they were the first, and then I was like,
Wait a second.
don't try to take that away from me. I have so few victories. Give me that one.
Well, I think you have a lot of victories. I mean, how many films did you say now? Over 30 films?
Yeah, it's got to be like 32 or 33.
What are kind of some of your personal favorites of the movies that you've made?
My personal favorites, my uh, three favorites so far, or I'll go four. My absolute favorite is My Fair Zombie, which I now have the rights back to. The rights are have reverted back to me, and I'm just trying to figure out what to do with it because it didn't really get seen as much as I thought it would. The distributor really, really wanted it, but then once they got it, they didn't do anything with it. So, um, My Fair Zombie, I love it. I think I, that film festivals didn't jump all over it really surprises me because it's I can't say enough about how much love I have for it. My next favorite is a movie I made called Murder in High Heels, which is a black and white film noir, which turned out just the way I wanted it to, and that happens so rarely,
Right.
But it turned out just the way I wanted to, and Alpha Video put it out at oldies.com, and they sell movies for $6,
Right. Yeah.
and I encourage everyone go get it because I love it. It's if you love film noir, it looks like, if I can be so humble, it looks like it was made in the 40s. Like we really tried. We did rear projection. We did things to make it look like it was of the era. So I love that movie. I also really like Spyfall, which is a James Bond parody I made, and we made it kind of like Airplane, the Zucker brothers kind of humor, and it really worked. I think we nailed the humor, and it's really funny, and it's a low budget James Bond movie, but it's very comical. And once again, it didn't do what it should have done because the distributor didn't know what to do with it. So I have the rights back to that too, but it's one of those ones that needs to be seen more because we're really proud of it. And then probably Kingdom of the Vampire. I think artistically that really turned out really nice. Like I think I I watched things like we did some crane shots and some nice transitions and just things that to me hold up really well. And I did a couple of westerns that people really like, but and they're really good. But to me, those were work for hire, so I almost they don't really count in some way because I didn't conceive them like the way I did the others. And I really like Pray for the Beast too, but that one's really under appreciated.
Right.
It was. I remember when I made Pray for the Beast. Um, it's a it's like a man in a suit, Bigfoot kind of movie, but it's not a Bigfoot. It's like a snout pig type thing.
Oh, and that suit is awesome.
And yeah, it's fantastic. It's a puppeteer friend of mine did it, and when we made it, we were really really proud of it. And I really still like it to this day. And Pierre David, who produced, I want to say, uh, Leprechaun, but I could be wrong about that. I think he was involved in some of the Scanners movies.
Okay.
Anyway, he was producing a lot of the movies of the week, sort of like Hallmark Channel type movies that come around here. And I think he was looking for new directors. And at the time, I had sent him Pray for the Beast and Kingdom of the Vampire, and he watched it. And this guy comes to me and he goes, "So I saw that you're a Pray for the Beast movie." And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "It's a man in a suit." I went, "Yeah." And then I realized that that wasn't a good thing to him. And so I was like, "It's a man in a suit." Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hmm. Like, he's like, "Yeah, people don't want that. People want CGI." I'm like, "I'm pretty sure they don't. I'm pretty sure you want them to want CGI." But so we had a man in a suit really killing people, and we had good gore. And, my hair looks fantastic in that movie. That's really the best performance in the whole film. And But I really like it. But I didn't get the gig because I did a Man in a Suit movie. I'm like, that's what I wanted to do. That was the plan.
Wow.
So
And that one was put out by Brain Damage Films, I think, originally, right?
that was my first one for Brain Damage. Yeah,
They
yeah.
did a
Jeff
few others.
O'Brien wrote that.
Was it the Pirates movie as well they put out? Was that the other one?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was 2009, and that's actually that reminds me of something you said earlier. I can't remember what your question was, but um, when you said when I was acting in my own films, um, you wanted to see what Brett's going to do next, right? I had a friend when I said I was going to do Pirates Quest for Snake Island in 2009. My friend Jody Hawk said, Brett's the kind of guy who, if he wakes up one day and says, I want to be a pirate, 3 months later, he's a pirate. And it's like, yeah, I guess I did. So um, yeah, we made a pirate movie, which was very ambitious for no
Super
money.
ambitious, yeah.
We were supposed to film that on a real tall ship. And then Jubilee Jewelers got a hold of this tall ship and filmed a commercial on it. And they had way more money than we had. So then the people who owned the tall ship came back to us and said, well, Jubilee Jewelers gave us a ton of dough. Why don't you give us some money too? And I'm like, never mind.
Yeah.
So we did the ship in CGI, which is the one thing about it that, CGI on standard definition doesn't really
Right.
doesn't really stand the test of time. But it was fun to do.
Yeah, I think I did one shot on that one for you, and I remember I struggled with the green screen on that because, like you said, those early SD videos green screen that wasn't an easy thing to pull a key on those.
No, and it was a 24p ones too, right? Like the yeah, which is even harder because everyone's doing it on 30. Yeah, if I had to do it over again, um, yeah, and that was still standard def 2009. Yeah.
Now, did
Uh,
you did you kind of get to work or talk with Darren Ramage much, who runs Brain Damage Films?
Hardly ever. Um, the funny thing I'll say about brain damage is when I first started out, a lot of filmmakers told me brain damage sucks. Don't go to brain damage. So, and then I got to tell you, they've been one of the most honest companies. They're the one company that always has their statements ready and the royalty checks ready to go.
Right.
And that's been for almost 20 years. So I've had no complaints with them whatsoever. But yeah, I think Darren's always got somebody who's working, I guess, in their acquisitions or something. And so I've dealt with like 4 different people over the years, but I think I've only had 1 or 2 emails from him. And the only time I got an email from him is when the rights to something would lapse, and he would say, "Hey, the rights to such and such a movie expired. Do you want to re-sign?" And
Right.
that only happened once or twice, and that's the only times I've ever heard from him. Oh, that's you know what? Yeah, I think so, but I've never spoken to him ever. It's that's it. It's interesting that you brought that up because I think in of all the distributors I've been distributed by, he's one of 2 companies that I've never talked to the people who own it. But then the other ones, like I've slept on J.R. Bookwalter's couch. So
That's what
it's
I'm
kind of
saying.
funny.
You kind of, of those kind of early companies that were really, putting out the micro budget stuff in the early 2000s. You kind of hit the big three. I mean, you did Tempe, you did Brain Damage, and you also did, EI or Alternative Cinema, which is really cool too.
Which which was really cool because going back to those alternative cinema magazines. I mean, when I first started off trying to figure out night songs, I'd look through the thing and I'd be like, oh, there's you know Ron Bonk from Sub Rosa doing Strawberry Estates or something, and then you got Mike Rasso is putting out Psycho Sisters, and you see these names. You got Kevin Lindenmuth is putting out Addicted to Murder, and J.R. Bookwalter's doing Polymorph, and I'm looking at all these things going, what is all this stuff? This is crazy. And then all these years later, I've worked with most of those people. So, um, and you know what, Pop Cinema, which is what EI became,
Right.
they were super cool people, and I love those people to bits. I don't think that they really knew what to do with a couple of my comedies. I did Ghastlies for them, which is like a Gremlins thing. That was on their dime, I think. Um, But super cool people, and I love Paige, who was in charge of the acquisitions, and Mike Rasso did a super cool thing where when I made Pray for the Beast, he actually called me up on the phone to reject it, which doesn't sound like a
Yeah,
cool
who
thing,
does
but it
that?
really
Who does
was.
that though, you know?
Yeah, the way he did it as a measure of respect, as if to say, I'm not going to put this movie out, but just so you know, I like what you're doing, and I wish I could, or something like that, which I thought was kind of cool. Um,
Yeah.
oh, which reminds me of, if I can go on an aside for a sec,
Please.
um, thinking about My Fair Zombie, like how proud I was of that. I sent it to one of the one of the bigger distributors of genre films at the time. I don't think it was Blue Underground. Synapse, I think it was. Maybe it was
Okay.
Synapse. And the owner called me up on the phone and he said, "You know what? We saw um, My Fair Zombie and I loved it." He said, "I loved it. My wife saw it. My wife loved it." He said, "My wife doesn't like anything I put out. My wife thinks everything I put out is garbage and pornography, and she loved your movie." And I was all flattered. I'm talking on the phone with him, and I thought, "Well, fantastic. Well, so what are we talking about then?" And he said, "Well, I can't put it out." Oh, why not? He goes, "I don't know how to sell it." He said, "If there were boobs in it, I could sell it, but," and he says, "and I'm not telling you to put boobs in it because your movie's fine as it is." He said, "I just wanted you to know I like it. I just don't know how to sell it."
Right.
So, and that was like, I got off the phone going, "I think I'm happy, but but I'm not positive. I don't know how I feel about that conversation." But it was nice of them, to say so, I guess.
Sure. And
So,
that's that kind of, was that something you'd kind of hear, periodically? Obviously you put out so many movies and have worked with so many distributors. Is obviously your movies have never relied solely on nudity and stuff like that to kind of really sell them. Would that be a constant, kind of thing you would hear sometimes from distributors?
it's interesting. At the beginning, I assumed that everyone would want it all the time. So
Right.
we did it for Night Songs, and we did it in The Feral Man, which is funny because we filmed the girl, and she didn't really have much of a chest, and we filmed her behind blinds, and you can barely see them, but she was full on naked. Um, and so we did it a couple of times, but then no one seemed to care after a while. But occasionally, you'd hear something like, you know, "Are you going to put nudity in it?" And I'd say, "Well, not for this budget. I can't afford to give some, like, nobody's going to take their shirt off for free." So we didn't really push it. And then my movies kind of became less about exploitable things and more about, the story and doing a good B movie on a dime.
Right.
Now I think a lot of the fans who are into that sort of thing uh, didn't really jump my way. I think the people who like Todd Sheets and stuff like that aren't necessarily saying, "Hey, let's check out a Brett Kelly movie." I'm sure there's some crossover, but um, so I probably alienated people who are into that sort of thing. But I feel like I've stayed true to what I wanted to do,
Right.
and the only time there's anything like that is when I wanted to do it. So now the funny thing is, there's almost a 360 on that now, because now you got stuff like Tubi TV where they're editing a lot of the movies. They're
Right.
actually taking a bunch of like full moon films, I think, and they're taking the nudity out. So there was talk. Um, Jim Wynorski thought that I should put nudity in Galaxy Warriors, and I said, I'm not really going to go in that direction.
Right.
And he's like, "Well, I don't know how you're going to sell it then." But the funny thing is, that's what's selling now is people want to be able to put stuff on streaming things and not have to worry about backlash.
Right.
So, um, you know, I've been trying to stay true to what I want to do, and I think at least I have. You know, I don't regret it. I don't regret not doing more nudity and all that sort of thing. And
Sure.
we have blood and guts, so I'm cool with that. You know what's funny? You know what I do regret? In My Dead Girlfriend, I love My Dead Girlfriend. I think it's really, really funny, but there's so much swearing in it that it's almost ludicrous. And occasionally I want to show my kids the movie because I'm proud of it and I think it's really funny. But I mean, they're swearing for no good reason.
Right.
Uh, and I think that was the first time I worked with a writer who wasn't myself. So I just didn't want to change the script. But there's so much swearing in it that I try not to put much swearing in my movies because I just find it embarrassing. I find that it's for me personally. I mean, other people can do it if they want to, but for me personally, I find it shows a lack of cleverness. And I'd rather at least feel like I tried to be clever than just kind of threw out an F bomb. Just
Right.
you know. So
I agree.
yeah.
Kind of
So
like the easy laugh, just throwing the F bombs in there and stuff like that, and it's like you said, there's a lot more clever ways of conveying the same type of things that a lot of times, in my opinion, I completely agree. I think way too much profanity in movies, and I curse like a sailor half the time, but
yeah,
it's
yeah. So do I. But it reminds me of that whole period where after Reservoir Dogs came out, every independent film suddenly
right,
had 400 swear words in it, and you're like, well, you don't look smarter.
right,
So do what you're good at. Hey, if you can swear like George Carlin, go for it. But
right,
but if you just cursing like the dude who's standing at the corner,
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, it's you know, it, people like Seaver and all that. They do what works for them, and he's got
oh,
a lot of
sure,
that sort of thing, and that's great. And he's got his audience, and that works for him great. And but for me, it just doesn't ring true to be a Brett Kelly movie.
sure, sure. And even with someone like Seaver, he's kind of being a little more creative with his use of adjectives and his use of language. It's not always just F this, F that,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, he has fun with it.
how he does it, yeah, which kind of makes his stuff very fun.
Yeah, maybe he's not the best example of what I meant, but it's
I get
it's
what you're
not my
saying.
style.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, also with the nudity, it is kind of interesting because you do look back on the '80s and the '90s and even the 2000s, and that did seem like that was the big push to sell now or back then. Where now it's yes, completely the opposite. It's like they don't want nudity. That I know I work for a company and we put a lot of stuff on Amazon and stuff like that. And same deal. If there's especially with independent stuff, especially, God forbid you have a breast shot in the movie, they're like, nope, out of here. We don't want it.
Yeah, they're looking for any excuse to get rid of you.
Uh-huh.
I remember a lot of the brain damage stuff from the early 2000s where it was just literally excuses to string together nudity for no reason. And,
Right.
I mean, that has its purpose, but it's not my style. I mean, I find it a little boring to watch,
Right.
you know. Um, Now, that being said, I will watch a Joe Sherlock film.
Sure. Sure.
And Joe likes his showers.
Uh-huh. He sure does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an Easter egg for Joe, is that he's going to find himself an hour into this.
But it's funny you mentioned that too about the nudity. I was just watching, I'm guessing you probably know this one. I was watching the new DVD of Dinosaur Island the other day.
Yeah.
Life and that's one of my favorites, but obviously that movie is loaded to the gill with nudity, and she's like, these nudity scenes are just so boring. I'm like, it's not about that, it's about Richard Gaba and Ross Hagen and the stop
Yeah.
motion and
I was going to order that, and the shipping to Canada would make that like a $50 purchase, and I'm like,
wow. Yeah,
I can't do $50 for a DVD these days.
right.
But I've wanted to see that one for years.
Yeah, it's cool. It's finally got a DVD release. I mean, it was only VHS for years and years. And I noticed it. I think it's an uncut version. I seem to recall it seemed like it had more nudity and stuff in it. So
Even more nudity.
yeah,
But when you're talking like late '90s, Michelle Bauer and like your JJ Norths and people like that, those are fun.
for sure. And they were a lot more kind of carefree. I think with those movies, like you said, they're really fun. It's kind of that fun atmosphere. They weren't really played to be like sleazy or anything like that.
No, they were played for fun and laughs. I mean, a lot of the movies, like what a lot of people may not recognize about Fred and Jim movies is that I think a lot of them they do what we modern guys do, which is I'll do an homage to like something I liked in the 80s, they'll
Mhm.
do homages to stuff they liked from the 50s. So you'll hear like Abbott and Costello jokes and things like that, and that's fun. So I like it.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
Agree. And it keeps going on, then you got guys. I'm not claiming to be a big filmmaker, but like I'm influenced by a lot of the 80s, 90s shot on video stuff and Fred Olen Ray stuff and all that too. So it it's a circle, it continues and
yeah.
continues and continues.
It's weird how the cycles go too, because you remember, I mean, it was like Sci-Fi Channel movies, and there was also a period of like um, movies where there was like guys with stealth bombers and race cars and like all these like weird movies where somebody like Dean Cain would show up and he'd have to fly a jet.
Right.
And then a couple years later, it's like now they're fighting dragons or whatever, and you're like
Uh-huh.
the whole that's the whole DVD thing where you're like you got something like UFO or whatever that company was called, and Velocity, and all these like neat DVD labels, and putting out stuff like the Brotherhood movies from Dakota and stuff like
Right.
that. Like those are some crazy days. And now you got video on demand where you really have to know what you're looking for in order to find it. I mean,
Mhm.
whereas back in our day, you'd go in like back in our day, I'm an old man now, but you'd go into a Blockbuster or something and you look on the shelf and you'd be like, what is that? I never saw Jacko before. I mean, and you'll pick it up and you'll bring it home. Whereas now, unless you know to look for it, you're going to get inundated with the stuff that's on the front page, like whatever's new.
And even on
So
something like a Tubi, which is probably at this point one of the better services to actually get low budget and micro budget films, now
mhm,
that Amazon's been dropping all that stuff. Like even in something like that, like you said, you kind of got to know what you're looking for or
yeah.
scroll through, hundreds and hundreds of titles before you get to, those types of titles in there.
Which misleading poster art will I follow today?
Yeah.
I just watched Invasion USA with Chuck Norris on that last night.
Oh, nice. Very cool. And one thing I wanted to ask you about too before, because we probably got to wrap this up fairly soon, but is I'd heard you mention that Galaxy Warriors is possibly your last movie. So I gotta ask you, what's the deal with that?
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be my final feature film after this 20-year, 30-something movie career. And the reasons are multiple, really. The one thing is it's exhausting. Um, in Ottawa, where I'm from, you used to be able to make a feature film like Pray for the Beast or something, and people would clamor to come and help to work on it or to be in it or all sorts of stuff. And they would know from having worked with me that the odds are really good that it's going to come out on DVD and their face is going to be on a DVD box and they'll be translated into Japanese or something like that.
Right.
So they used to be a really, really good time. But now what happened, and this is just one of the reasons, is the actors union has started taking people in for being extras. So suddenly everyone's in the union and no one wants to be in a movie like mine anymore because they can get $13 an hour to stand next to Tori Spelling and do nothing.
Right.
Um, so that's a bit of a hassle, and also they underpay their crews, these movies. So suddenly I'm competing for the same people that are guaranteed to get paid, well, mostly guaranteed to get paid to work on a movie of the week for Hallmark, then come work on like a space movie or something. So
Right.
it's frustrating because it's hard to find people, which is the whole reason why Heavy Metal Werewolf didn't happen, is I couldn't find people. So there's that, and then uh, it's um, there's no money in it anymore. There honestly isn't. When I made those westerns. I'd be making $25,000 westerns, and then a $15,000 shark movie, and then the very next offer that comes along is Full Moon comes along and says, "Hey, you want to make a movie for us for 5,000?" You
Right.
know, 5,000. Well, it's Full Moon, so okay, that never happened either. But then suddenly, someone's like, "Hey, make one for us. It's 3,000." You're like, all in. From thinking me, I have to write the script, I have to cast it, everything all the way down to editing for 3 grand. It's ludicrous. And then I just got asked 6 months ago to make a movie for someone. Like someone said to me, "Hey, you're the guy to talk to about making shark movies. You make shark movies that really sell, right? So I want you to make one for us." I'm like, "All right, what do you want?" And they said, "We'll give you $1,500."
Wow.
Really? and you came to me because you know they're going to sell, right? So it's a little insulting, and you go, I'm not going to put all that work in. And then what happens is then 6 months later, the internet comes and shits all over me because I made a movie that doesn't look like Jaws. No one's criticizing the people who put up the peanuts to sell it to them. I'm just the guy trying to put shoes on my kids' feet. So it's kind of like, well, that's frustrating. I'd rather do one. I'd rather make stuff I want to that I like. So we're making Galaxy Warriors because I'm like, you know what? I'd rather make it for whatever I can scrape together and make something I love, rather than make like Fart Shark 3 or something. You know what I mean? Like, who cares? So it's exhausting, and I don't want to bust my hump for nothing. Because then you got people going, hey, if you're getting $1,500, where's my cut? You're like, of what? Like, it's embarrassing. And so that's another reason. And then I also look back and I go, what have I not accomplished that I set out to accomplish? And I've pretty much, the only type of movie I've never made that I want to make is a Universal monster movie. But I can always do a short later on. You know what I mean? And I'll do it for fun. I won't do it. I won't worry about whether or not a distributor is going to rip me off, which has also happened a million times too. Like, um, I'm, I'm, you make movies and then suddenly, you see that the company's putting it out all over the world, but they won't give you the royalty statements. And you go, come on, or they try to pull a fast one. And it just happens so often where, Jurassic Shark has made somebody probably a fortune.
Sure.
And I keep hearing of it all the time, and I'm not making anything. I'm not getting any money for it. So I'm not being greedy, but you just gotta go, how much stress is this worth? And I'd rather um, make some of my kids' dreams come true, because I've made a lot of my dreams come true. So I'll help them out. You know, I'm 48 years old. I mean, I'm, uh, I did a lot of it. And maybe someday, um, like I don't know. Uh, I I'm not certain how my career will be perceived in retrospect, but I guess I shouldn't really worry about it. But I know that year by year, I would be like, I want to make a pirate movie, or I want to make a whatever robot movie or something. That I would do it, and I did the things I wanted to do, and I set out with goals, and I did it, and that feels good. So I might as well get out before suddenly people are like, I'll give you a large cup of coffee, and if you make me a snake movie or something, forget it. you know,
Right.
Not interested. Oh, and make sure there's nudity in it. It's like, come on. And you know what? The other thing is like, um, and then when I turn down these cheapy things, like someone like $2,000 to make a shark movie, I say no thanks. Then they find a kid who's going to do it for 1,000.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And you go, well, I mean, let them make their dreams come true. That's fine. I've done it. I don't need to. I don't need to take scraps if because I can remember what it's like when I was making Kingdom of the Vampire, and I made that for peanuts, and I could remember feeling like I'd conquered the world because someone gave me a budget.
Right.
So I don't need to do it for peanuts anymore. I mean, so Galaxy Warriors is going to be as best as I can do with the money I can do it with, and we'll see. I mean, I like to go out with a bang, so hopefully film festivals want it. Hopefully, I'm not sure how I'll distribute it yet, but I want to do it on the way I want to do it. I want the poster to look like what I want it to look like, and I want to I want to go out positively.
Right.
So we'll see.
That's cool, but let's. I hope never say never. I hope it won't be your last thing, Brett. I'm personally a fan, and I know you have other fans out there. And
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, never say never, but for the time being, at least, I'm
sure.
planning to retire.
But now, are you obviously though? I presume you're going to keep up with the music and all that, Gelatin Skeleton.
I'm gonna do Gelatin Skeleton, and I'll probably do short films here and there, um, and we're talking about maybe doing a sketch comedy thing with my and we might do some kids videos as well, just for something to keep busy. But yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. I don't remember what it's like to be a normal person,
Right.
so it might be interesting to try that for a little while and like wake up in the morning and wear a shirt that doesn't have the name of a band or a vampire on it.
Right.
And but I probably still will. You know, I don't know what it's like to be normal anymore, but but we'll give it a try.
Awesome.
I mean, I make B movies and I sing in a hair band, so I hardly have any idea concept of what's normal.
Well, it's been awesome chatting with you, and I mean, you've had such a great career, Brett. And if this is your swan song, I mean, from what I've seen of this movie, it looks absolutely amazing. What you guys have already pulled off, with the
Thanks.
costumes and the set pieces, and I'm personally really excited to see it, and I hope people checking this out will definitely check it out, as well as
Yeah,
some of those other movies you recommended, like My Fair Zombie, and some of those other ones, because they're a lot of fun. And definitely pat yourself on the back, Brett. I mean, people like me, watching your stuff and a lot of that other early mini DV stuff was just very influential. I mean, that's when I was going to film school, was during that time. And a lot of us, that kind of gave us the boost to go, hey, we can do this too. We can go out
oh
there
cool.
and we can make these movies too. So
Well, thanks, buddy.
it's been an honor working with you. I mean, you gave me my first effects job. I think I've done like 200 movies since. So it's just been really cool, and cool to finally talk to you after 15 years of.
No kidding. No kidding. Uh, people should check out Galaxy Warriors on Facebook and yeah, or check me out on Facebook too or whatever. It's all good. But yeah, it's been a long time, and I'm glad we finally got to chat.
For sure, for sure. So Facebook's probably the best way just for people to get a hold of you if they want to.
Yeah, I would say go to facebook.com/Galaxy Warriors movie, and I'm pretty easy to find from there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Groovy. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks so much, Brett, and thanks everyone for watching and checking this out. We're going to be taking a week off for the holidays, so I can go visit my mom and eat turkey and drink copious amounts of beer. So
Happy
we'll be
Thanksgiving.
back in a couple weeks. And hey, Brett, I'd love to have you back on maybe when the movie's out or something. You have a million movies, so I mean, we barely scratched the surface of your career, but I don't want to keep
Anytime,
you all
bud.
night. So.
Anytime.
All right. Thank you much, Brett. Appreciate it. And thanks everyone for watching, listening, and we'll see you.